Brought to you from Melbourne, Australia. This is the Badminton Podcast, a community for badminton players by badminton players, where we talk badminton, celebrate local heroes, interview players from all walks of life, and push you to grow as a player and a person. Introducing your hosts, Jeff and Henry.
Welcome to the Badminton Podcast. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Henry.
And we're the co-founders of Volant, and we're here because we love badminton.
And for those who are listening, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to be here with episode 1 of our podcast. If you want to find out more about what our podcast is about and why we started, please listen to our introduction episode.
It's our privilege to introduce to you our podcast guest. His name is Sam Ho. Sam is a great friend of ours, and he's previously represented Australia at the Youth Olympics in badminton. An injury coupled with his parents telling him to find a job. Sam retired in his peak physical condition and is now a corporate banker at National Australia Bank. Sam's currently completing his MBA at Melbourne Business School as well.
Thanks so much for being on our show, Sam.
No worries.
So do you have anything else to add to that introduction?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the intro undersold me a bit. I'm actually in my peak physical condition now. I'm feeling fitter than ever. But no, on a serious note, I love playing badminton, and I had played badminton for a very long time. And thanks for having me on the show.
No worries.
Great to have you on. Sam, I do understand it is a very exciting time for you at the moment. Can you just share what's actually happening in your life right now?
Yeah, I'm actually going off to London Business School this Saturday. Sorry, I'm not going yet. I'm doing a bit of travelling, and then I'm going to do some of my MBA subjects at London Business School on Exchange. I'll be gone for 5 months, and it's a pretty exciting and scary time of my life because this is really the first time in 6 or 7 years that I'm not working for a significant period of time. But at the same time, it's a pretty fun and interesting opportunity. So yeah,
fantastic. So you say you're going to do a bit of travel before you go to London?
Yeah, not sure where I'm going yet. I haven't even booked accommodation to live in London, and I'm there in 2 weeks. So all I know is I'll probably go to Oktoberfest, maybe Paris, City of Love with the fiance. Shame I proposed already, so she ain't getting a proposal again. But
no second chances.
No second chances. So apart from that, not sure. I am there to study, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, great.
Sounds like a lot of fun, a lot of learning as well.
Yeah, should be fun.
Now, just bring you back to badminton. I'd love to hear more about your badminton story, Sam. So would you mind telling us, when did you actually start playing badminton and how did you get started?
I started badminton probably when I was about 13. I think I never picked up a racket or anything. I watched Dad play a few times and he was terrible. And he lost to his friends a lot. And so how I got into badminton was he wanted a younger and fitter version of himself in me to beat all his friends. My greatest individual and team achievement is still winning the Australasia mixed doubles title with Leanne. We came from, it was a big comeback. We ended up winning the third set, 30-29. And that day there was a lot of, negativity that had happened to me, and to overcome them and to show that I could play, and that was probably the best game that I had kind of really encapsulated all my qualities. So yeah.
Now the next thing I really want to ask is, just based on what you said about your best badminton achievements and your experiences, you often relate to both individual achievements as well as team achievements and being part of a team. So I was wondering, how do you feel when you go into the corporate world and you go into the real world, that team environment plus that individual ability to train hard and perform on your own, how do you feel those two go in hand in life and in the corporate world, and how do you feel that that's really helped you? And in addition to that, how do you feel it can help a listener get the best out of badminton, even if they're not on the state teams, but even if they're at local clubs playing for themselves, playing for a local team, how do you feel that that's going to really help them?
Yeah, good question. There's a few elements to that. I think the first one that I'd like to highlight is especially that being individual but also being part of a team. I think in the corporate world and in badminton, sometimes you focus on yourself and being the best you can do, but there's that cliche, the team's only as strong as your weakest link, and that's really true, especially in a team competition. Sure, you might be winning your games, but if your teammates are losing, you don't want to see that, and it's still a bad outcome for the team. Similar to the corporate world, I might be doing my work at a high quality, but if my other team members are struggling, whether it be a capacity issue or a skill issue, and the quality of the work that we kind of deliver, isn't going to be the quality that I want it to be. So I guess what I want to say about that is it's always to be mindful of your team, and especially if you're a leader. And in my case, I generally was. It was really important that I motivated my team and helped them get to a level that I know that they can get to, and they want to get to as well. So, so that's one part of it. The other part is you have to be really careful with your expectations. When I was reflecting back on, the times that I partnered with my brother, he wasn't as good, and because he wasn't as good, my behaviours was generally very frustrated, and 15-year-old throwing tantrums and stuff like that. Back then people go, he's young and it's okay, but it took me a while to mature and get to that. So, and I think that's happens a lot in the corporate world. We get really frustrated with maybe some inefficient parts of the business, but it's really thinking about, well, how can I make it better, instead of just complaining and throwing tantrums and being really negative about it. It's how do I turn it around to make it better. And I think some of those outcomes later, when I was a bit older and I played with my brother a bit more and I had that maturity, we achieved better results because I helped, didn't put pressure on him, but I always, found ways to work better together. So I guess those were the two kind of takeaways that, I had.
So Sam, you were talking about motivating your team. So what are some of the things that you do to motivate your teammates in both the corporate world as well as the badminton world as well?
Motivation's an interesting one. I think everyone has a baseline sort of skill, whether it be you can train all you want, but on the day it's how you play. Similar to work. We're not going to learn things in a day, and when they're doing stuff, it's an accumulation of all their experiences. So we can't really change much about that. So it really all comes down to, for me, cultivating the best environment that I can, make for the team, both at work and in badminton. Whether it be in badminton, it's quite simple sometimes. It's being present for your team members. It's sitting there, watching them, showing support, being engaged with their play, and when the time's right, giving them feedback and feedback that's highlights that you really care about them and that you have actually watched the game, not just generic spiels about you should do this better, you should do that. It's really tailoring the feedback, and that translates back to work. It's you can get so much more out of your team if they want to work for you. And whether that be, I don't want them to do late hours, but really being present at work and wanting to do the work, not procrastinating because they can, but it's working because Sam needs this work and I really want to work for Sam, and having that fun, relaxed environment so that people can not work with pressure. I think those, that's the way that I like to think I cultivate a good corporate work environment, and it's very difficult at a bank sometimes. Sometimes people are a bit more old-fashioned, but you just got to stick to it. I think change doesn't happen in a day, so again, that comes back to the badminton piece. It's about the resilience that to push for change and wanting to do better.
Cool. And Sam, as for the time that I've known you as a person, and Henry as well, we've both known you to be a kind of person that is always about team, that's always building teams, that's always leading teams, that's going the extra mile to help your teammate or help anyone that's actually in need. And if we can take a step back, say for someone who's actually looking to apply for a position in a corporate role, because we know that you've been really successful in your interviews, you have a way about you, you're very charismatic, and people can feel how much you care about other people. If someone was to go in for an interview and they were going to reflect on their sport and badminton and team, even if it's not at a really high level, how do you think that they could position themselves in a way that the person interviewing could feel how much they care about other people in the team as well? So what do you do in your interviews? How do you express how much you care about team and how you can work in a team for someone who may be listening, who is applying for a corporate job, who is trying to get that real good technique for an interview down pat?
No, that's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer. We always follow the STAR technique when we answer questions. That's the set standard, really. But it's really trying to build a picture. I think sport isn't really used much in interviews because people generally see it as fun, jovial, non-corporate sort of question, but it can really work to your advantage because it really clearly differentiates you from the next candidate. A lot of people, will have the generic, I worked at David Jones, or customer service sort of scenarios. And if you can bring in a sports sort of example, I think that really shows you're different and you can be flexible in answering a question. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's really setting up a scene well. I think going back to that STAR technique. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So it's not about what I achieved, whether it be a high level. It's what your actions really ultimately were. In those situations and what the task was. And, you could be playing social soccer and you could have been losing 3-0 in a social setting. And, that's how you set the scene, really evoke those sort of emotions of coming back. But, an interviewer will really ultimately concentrate on your actions and how you went about, going about to motivate your team. And I kind of answered it previously. How did I motivate them? Tailoring my feedback and being present, all those sorts of things, and which led to the result. I think that really, helps articulate the answer really clearly. And everyone's different. Everyone will have stronger examples. Doesn't need to be sport, but I use sport because I did, do it at a very high level. But coming out of university sometimes, especially my brothers, they haven't got much work experience. And, sport is a very good way to answer one of those really tough interview questions.
So if someone was going to use something like the STAR technique or the STAR model that you just outlined, would you be able to give us an example of how someone would use it? So run through basically the S, the T, the A, and the R, so that it could help them to formulate their answer in their head so they know what they're saying when a question does come up.
I think one of my examples that I still remember, because this got me the job at NAB in the graduate program, was the question was, can you show me an example that you showed resilience? And that was a really tough question. It was kind of thrown back. It threw me back a bit, and I took some time and I paused and thought about it. So my example was this. There was a time that I was playing, representing Australia at the Australian Junior Championships. I had just been informed that I didn't, make it into the Commonwealth youth team. And it was to kind of set the importance of that Commonwealth youth team. I'd been training for it for 4 months. I was in the squad already, and I thought I got in. So that was my situation, that I was in this negative state of mind. My task was then to go play in the finals. I was crying, but I had to gather my thoughts and, still play the finals. And, that was really tough because at that time that was the last thing on my mind. So, my actions were ultimately, to refocus on the task. And, it's easier said than done. And it took me a set to do it. I think I still remember, getting smashed in that first set. It was 21-13. I was still crying, but it was regathering and focus. And it kind of, I kind of had to think about, again, why I was doing what I was doing. I was doing it for my mum. I was doing it for myself. I was doing it for my partner. And, reassessing how important this game was for me and try and isolate the negativity. I think if I had the negativity kept weighing on my mind, I would have just lost very quickly. And so that's what I did. I kind of just concentrated, stayed calm and refocused. And the result was, it went back to Jeff. I won 30-29 in that game. And, coming from I think the opponent had 4 match points. And I'm thinking, I can't lose this. I need to focus, stay strong mentally. And, I won it from nowhere. And yeah, sure, I won the game, but it just showed the selectors, the quality of the person that I was, the resilience that I had, the mental strength that I had. And there's not many chances you get in life that you can show selectors that way, because you have to take your chances. And that day I took my chances, and I showed them what they missed out on. So I think, and I remember when I was telling that story in the interview, the interviewers were so engaged. They were hanging by every word. They were waiting for the result. They were waiting for what actions I did. And the amount of questions that I got afterwards about, in regards to the game, they forgot about the interview completely. It just became what happened next? It became a conversation, and that really relaxed them a bit, because it wasn't a straight up corporate example. It was one that had a lot of emotion in it, and they could tell from my tone and my voice that it meant a lot to me. So that was a really strong answer. And when they went back, I remember when they told me afterwards, they were discussing, they're like, Sam's the badminton guy, we got to hire him. And that's what, really got me the job in the end. So
fantastic. Yeah, I really like that staff framework, because quite a lot of the time we have the stories inside of ourselves, and we know deep inside ourselves how the story goes, but having an actual framework, so the S, the T, the A and the R, it just gives us a really good way of expressing it succinctly and not getting kind of muddled up and telling a really good story.
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially, any young graduates coming out and, listening to the podcast right now. It's having that framework sets you up so well, and it delivers the answer a lot more clearly for the interviewers. You really want to make their lives as easy as it can be. So, if you stick to this framework, it really shows that you can think logically, and those are the kind of qualities that interviewers are looking for. So, yeah.
All right, thanks, Sam. I mean, it certainly sounds like quite a significant life event for you, and it's quite a compelling story. And the question I have for you is, I guess, a bit more hypothetical, because it really depends on what you think would have actually happened. So, for example, seeing as this event is a demonstration of your resilience, how do you think you would have changed if you didn't respond in the way that you had responded?
Yeah, like I said, I think, if I stayed negative and I lost the game, I would have lost the game. I forgot to say, I was also injured, and I torn my meniscus a week prior to that competition. So, like I said, there's not that many chances you get to show the selectors. Not that they made a mistake, because I think anyone that got selected in that squad that day, deserved to be there. But if I'd stayed in that mindset, it would have been very easy to give up, and that was really the easy option. And I had a perfectly valid excuse to lose. No one would have blamed me if I lost. But that's not what life's about. It is about overcoming those obstacles, and that happened to me when I was 18, and that stayed with me 11 years on. So when you do overcome those hurdles, you remember them forever, and you reflect on it, and you're really proud of it. If I stayed negative and I had that mindset, I would still be, I think, fine. But would I be a stronger person for it? Absolutely not. So, yeah, it's definitely very important to be able to switch.
So do you think you would be in a totally different place than where you are now?
It's a good question, because I don't think about it that much, and for me, it's lucky I don't have to think about it, because I didn't have any regrets. It's not saying that it's not like winning was the most important thing. I could have lost that game, but if I had been positive and not regretted the way that I had played, then I would have just been as good. I think if I had really stayed negative, lost the game to an absolute blowout, I think I would be in a different position. I think the connections that I had made with my friends after that day, they really saw the type of person I was. And that really shows the character that, I want to show to my friends and my family. And that really makes them proud. So definitely a lot of things would have changed, but I didn't have to win the game. Yeah. It's all about that mindset.
Yeah, right. I really do like that, because a lot of the times people are often dictated by external factors. But when we actually make the choice ourselves internally to make a change or make a mind shift, and we do everything we can to achieve what we want to achieve, even if the outcome doesn't come, a shift happens within you. And that's more important than the actual outcome itself, because the outcome itself, sometimes we can't change. Yeah. But the way we react to it, the way we prepare for it, the way that we actually try and basically conduct ourselves, that's where the magic really happens, not in the result in itself. So I think that's really powerful. Sam, just shifting gears just for a moment now. So now you are a corporate banker at NAB, National Australia Bank, and you've also almost finished your MBA at Melbourne Business School. Now, I'm sure there's some listeners who have already passed that stage of finding a corporate job, and I'm sure there's a few that are potentially considering to actually do their MBAs and get their MBA qualification. Now, you being almost finished with the qualification itself, just having a semester left, what would you say would be the highlights or the benefits of doing an MBA, in your opinion?
There's a lot of different things. I think, being a pretty young corporate banker at the moment, the MBA has really, opened a lot of opportunities for me. It's almost like getting your driver's license, only, it's like a corporate license where you can talk to a lot of variety of people. You have the opportunity to meet a lot of different people and really help, understand corporations at a higher level. I think being at the lower levels or the more junior levels in an organisation, sometimes, we kind of go, why do we do this? What's the big picture? And the MBA really helps kind of show why we do things and how everything fits together and why it's important. So that's really important. For more senior people, you do have the chance to sometimes almost reflect and restart. I think when you're at quite a senior level, we're always, stuck in our old habits. And the MBA, not saying that's the magic wand and that's going to fix everything, but you're kind of around people that deals with situations in all different ways. And if something's not working in your current organisation and you're doing something that you think is right, but it's still not working, having the experience of a lot of different other people's and how they approach the problems differently could really help you. And the MBA has really, helped me, even if I'm a junior, associate or senior associate. It's really opened my eyes to how I can approach problems a bit differently. And that's kind of the most rewarding thing that I've taken out. Just looking at things differently, having an open mind, having that higher level thinking, which a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it's a bit of a lesson in perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
And so for people who are actually interested in going to something like Melbourne Business School for their MBA, what kind of advice would you give to these people?
Be really sure of what you want to do. I think, prior to applying for the MBA, I didn't apply for a year and a half, but it was really knowing what you wanted to do, because it is a big financial and time commitment. I wouldn't say it's extremely hard, but again, it goes back to the badminton side. It's, can you put in the hard work to achieve the results that you want to achieve? And, you only get out what you put in. And if you feel like you can just do it, get the 3 letters on the paper, on your resume, you're not going to get the learnings out of it. It is really taking the time, listening to people, contributing to class. That's going to be the most rewarding experience, because you might get a job somewhere because you have an MBA, but you'll get exposed very quickly if you're not agile, if you've got a very stubborn train of thought, which MBAs aren't meant to be. They're meant to be really open-minded, take on feedback really well. So I think be really sure with what you want to do. The MBA is not for everyone, especially I've worked in finance, but if you want to get into finance, you might not want to do the MBA. You shouldn't do the MBA. You might want to do a master's in applied finance, something else. So it's really important you just know what you want to do before you dive into it. That's my most important, tip. Other than that, doing the MBA has been great. I've learned so much. I've met so many people, and I've got this London opportunity now that if you asked me a year ago what I would be doing, this definitely wouldn't be something that I would have said. So really exciting for me.
It certainly sounds like a very exciting time in your life. And tell us more about London and going to London Business School.
I honestly don't know what to expect, and I guess that's half the fun of it. It is a very prestigious school, and the caliber of students there are definitely sometimes overwhelming. But I know I've put in the hard work in Melbourne, and I know I'll continue putting in the hard work in London. I'm prepared to study, but when it comes to eating or traveling or having the money, I'll worry about that later. But for now, I'll just take it, like the footy say, one day at a time. So we'll see.
Now, just a quick perspective about the MBA before we kind of wrap things up here. From my understanding and what you've said, when you do your undergrad course, it's kind of a bit of I'm in it for myself and I'm doing things individually, and that's what I get out of the university course. But from the MBA, it kind of sounds more like, hey, it's the people that you meet, it's the people you interact with, the community that you build. And half the learning might be the curriculum itself, but the other half could just be being around your peers. How would you say the difference is between doing your undergraduate study and the MBA, and how much better or how much more benefit do you feel it is having that community in the MBA?
I've got a few thoughts about that. When I did my undergrad, I think with all young people, we kind of do things, and a lot of our decisions are shaped by our parents. The MBA was something that I actually did for myself. I actually made that conscious effort going, I'm going to pay $90,000 to study. And my parents didn't tell me this. It was my own decisions, which, firstly, that in itself is quite powerful and very different to undergrad already. And, to your point around the undergrad, it is, people don't even attend lectures half the time. It's, who crams the night before the exam the best. So it is very individual. So your assignments are, someone does a part, someone else does a part, put it together an hour before the due date, and hopefully it looks okay. The NBA is completely different. You need to, some people are still like that, don't get me wrong, but if you really want to achieve the good results, you've got to be working as a team and really getting learnings from every single person, because everyone has a different perspective, everyone has a different approach to doing things, and that makes your learning so much richer. So it is very different, and the maturity of the people is very different. People have, that work experience a lot. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. And lastly, probably, the NBA is not as theoretical. A lot of the undergrads were taught by academics that, I'm not going to discredit them for sure, because some of them are still a lot smarter than me, but having lectures that have industry experience and that can really link what you learn and how it translates to a work environment is so much more powerful than just a lecturer telling you that's the formula, that's what, that's how you should do it. So those are kind of like the key differences.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like a very highly collaborative environment from what you're saying. And that an undergrad, it seems like you're taught how to learn, how to think, and in the MBA you're sort of taught how to contribute as part of a team and learn how to do based on experience, rather than just knowing formulas and sort of theoretical knowledge that can't really be applied in the real world. But yeah, so it sounds like you've certainly learned a lot in your MBA, and it really is exactly as you said. You get out of it what you put in. So coming back to I guess life, the corporate world, badminton in general, and just to sort of round everything out for our listeners as well. So I guess, what are 3 take-home pieces of advice or actions you recommend for someone listening?
My initial thing is, especially in this interview, I've kind of had the chance to reflect a bit, which I really do. My first thought is not taking life too seriously. I think, we're in such high pressure environments, and sometimes we forget to just sit and laugh and, really enjoy those moments. Especially during badminton, each tournament you kind of go, oh, win, and you sometimes forget why you did it in the first place. I think so. Sometimes stop, think, and have a laugh, and be happy and grateful with where you are. My second piece of takeaway advice would be thank your support network every day. I think in this podcast we would have heard the support my mum gave me when I was a badminton player, and the groundwork that she's put into me is really important to be the person that I am today. And my mum has passed away now for about 6 years, and sometimes we got to remember how important those support networks are, and how important they are in shaping our decisions. So sometimes it's good to not yell at your mum and stop and think and thank her. It doesn't have to be your mum. It can be your brother, your sister, your dad, your grandparents. It doesn't really matter. But know who your support networks are and be grateful for them. I guess my last thought would be, don't underestimate the power of sport and how it can translate into everything you do, day-to-day life. As we get older, we play social netball, social football, social badminton, but in all those activities, there's always learnings. You could get injured, and it's how you come back from them. You don't have to play at a high level, but there's so many learnings and takeaways that you can get out of that. So don't forget that. Sometimes, we're all just consumed, like I said in my first thought, it's consumed in winning. Just, there's a lot of learnings that you can get from those sports that don't come from corporate environments or work. And they're equally as powerful.
Fantastic, Sam. Thank you. Last question for you is, how can listeners contact you or connect with you if they've got any questions, they want any advice, or just want to have a hit of badminton with you?
Yeah, sure. If they don't mind losing, feel free to contact me on, you can find me by Volant. I'm good friends with these guys, or, you can find me on Instagram, ho1328, if you ever want to hit, or, if you're going through an interview process and you're thinking, I have no one that has that sort of experience, who can I talk to? Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help.
Thanks so much for coming on to the Badminton Podcast, Sam. There were so many invaluable bits of information. I'm sure that a lot of the listeners took away a lot of things they want to start changing, implementing and learning in their own lives. And I'm sure that your Instagram handle is probably going to get a few requests here and there for some advice and maybe to take you up on your challenge of trying to beat you at badminton, which is a pretty hard task. I'll be absolutely honest with that. So to all the listeners, thanks for tuning in to the Badminton Podcast. We'll continue to push you to grow, both as a person and as a player, by inviting special guests like Samuel Ho onto the show.
What I really like about Sam, as highlighted in our interview, is his sense of obligation to develop and help others, and his ability to overcome obstacles as demonstrated through his star example.
And what I really liked was his ability to relate sport and badminton to all aspects of his life. So you can basically adapt your sporting achievements and your sporting experiences to working in a team, going for a job interview, and in life, and just dealing with conflict and talking about that resilience that he was speaking about. That's so important, and you learn those skills from sport. So that's what I really enjoyed about the podcast.
So that's it for us, guys. Make sure that you keep sharing your love of the sport with everyone and show the world how incredible our sport is.
And if you do want to connect with us, we'd be more than happy to have a chat. And if you want to be a guest on our podcast, we'd love you as well. So you can connect with us either on Instagram, Facebook, or on our website. So it's Volantwear, VOLANTWEAR. So it's volantwear.com on our website, and on Instagram and on Facebook, it's just Volantwear in itself with no space between them.
So thank you once again for tuning in, and you'll hear from us soon.
This podcast was brought to you by Volantwear, the most versatile badminton apparel you'll ever own.